Okay, so have you ever read a book that just like totally changes how you see the world?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's what Wicked does. Like
Totally.
it gets under your skin and makes you think, and we are diving deep into this book.
Awesome.
It's Gregory Maguire's Wicked, the book that flipped the script on, one of the most iconic villains ever,
Uh-huh.
the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah.
But it's not just a simple retelling.
No, not at all. It's like he took everything we thought we knew about Oz and kind of turned it on its head.
We've got excerpts from this chapter. It's called The Untold Origins of Wicked, from The Wizard of Oz to Maguire's masterpiece.
Okay.
And it's for this deep dive, and let me tell you, this is not your grandma's fairy tale.
Right.
So Maguire had this really cool idea to explore like the backstories of the characters we usually think of as the bad guys.
Yeah. He wanted to give them a voice to kind of understand like what made them wicked in the first place.
And who better to start with than the Wicked Witch of the West?
Exactly.
I mean, in the original Wizard of Oz, she's just pure evil.
Right.
But Maguire's like, what if there's more to the stories?
Yeah.
And it gives us Elphaba.
Elphaba.
That's the witch's real name.
I love that name.
I know, it's such a great name. But, okay. So imagine this.
Huh?
You're born with green skin.
Hmm.
In a world where everyone else looks, well, normal.
Oh, wow. Talk about being judged from the moment you enter the world.
You are instantly an outsider.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how easily we labeled people as different, even in our own world.
Oh, absolutely. That's what Maguire's doing with that green skin, right? It's like
Yeah.
a symbol of societal prejudice.
Hmm.
He's saying difference can be kind of scary, but it doesn't automatically mean evil.
Right. And this whole idea of identity, that is like woven through the whole book.
Yeah.
So Elphaba's green skin, it's not just like a physical trait.
Right.
It becomes like a metaphor
Yeah.
for anyone who has ever felt like they just don't belong. Maguire actually writes, she had been born with it, this emerald hue, as much a part of her as her heart. He's making it clear that being different, like, that's part of who she is. It's not something she can just change or hide.
It's in her DNA.
It's like he's saying, before you judge someone, try to understand their story first.
Right.
And her story's rough. The chapter talks about her childhood. It was hard. Growing up with a dad who like couldn't accept her green skin and a mom who, had her own secrets.
Yeah, wow. So it's almost like Maguire is setting us up for Elphaba's rebellion, right? She's forced to question everything she's been taught.
Exactly. And that includes the so-called goodness of the wizard himself.
Oh, yeah, the wizard. Remember that kindly old dude from the movie?
Yeah.
Well, Maguire's version is, he's way more complicated.
He is not what he seems.
Yeah.
The chapter calls him a master of illusion. He's basically using his power to control everyone in Oz.
Oh, wow. So he's not a benevolent leader.
No, he's more concerned with like his image than actually helping people.
It makes you think, right? About those people who act like they're doing good, but really they're just trying to stay in control.
Right. Like, how do you know who to trust? And Elphaba, she sees right through the wizard's, whole act.
Yeah.
She's not afraid to challenge him, to call him out.
Which makes her a threat. Of course, he can't have someone questioning his power, especially not someone like Elphaba. She's smart and she's outspoken.
Makes you wonder, like, what if being wicked is really just about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard?
Ooh, I like that. Maguire makes us question everything we thought we knew about good and evil in this book, right? Like, what if the real villains are the ones in charge, the ones who are taking advantage of everyone else?
Right. And get this, the Oz in this book, it is not all sunshine and lollipops like in the movie.
Oh, really?
Maguire gives us this world with, like, political intrigue and social hierarchies. There's even a whole movement for animal rights. It's crazy.
Wow. So he's using Oz to comment on things happening in our world, like power struggles and prejudice and all of that.
Yeah. It's like he's holding up a mirror.
Yeah.
Wait, did you say animal rights?
Yeah, animal rights. It's one of the things that makes Maguire's version so interesting. The animals in Oz, they're sentient beings, but they're oppressed by the ruling class.
So it's not just about witches and wizards. It's about a whole system of injustice.
Exactly.
And Elphaba, she becomes a huge advocate for these animals.
She does. It's a major turning point for her. She starts to see that, fighting for justice isn't just about her own experiences. It's about speaking up for anyone who's being silenced or mistreated.
It's like saying that compassion has no limits.
Yeah.
And that's where her story really starts to change.
Yeah.
She's not just a villain. She's this complex person who's really passionate about what she believes in.
That makes me wonder what happens to turn her into the Wicked Witch we all think we know.
Right. Like, how does she go from fighting for good to being the bad guy?
Well, the chapter does kind of hint at some of the things that cause her downfall. It talks about how she gets disillusioned with the wizard and she's increasingly frustrated with how unfair everything is in Oz. And then there's her relationship with her sister.
Her sister. Now, that's something I want to hear more about.
It's really fascinating. So Elphaba's younger sister, her name's Nessaros,
Okay.
and she's born without any magical abilities, but their father, he absolutely adores her.
Okay.
Which, creates some tension in the family, especially since Elphaba already feels like an outsider.
Yeah, I can see how that would be hard.
And it gets even more complicated because Nessaros, she's also physically disabled. She needs a wheelchair to get around. So this adds another layer to the whole idea of difference that Maguire is exploring, right?
So he's showing us that there are all sorts of ways to be different, and that each of them comes with its own struggles.
Exactly. And those experiences with her sister, they really shape how Elphaba sees justice and compassion. She sees firsthand how people who are different are treated unfairly.
It reminds me of that saying, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Even in this fantasy world of Oz, Maguire is showing us that empathy and understanding are super important.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got this reimagined Wicked Witch who is fighting for what's right.
Mhm.
We've got a manipulative wizard who is pulling all the strings.
Right.
And this whole world of Oz that's way more complex than we ever imagined.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
Well, we can't forget about Glinda, the Good Witch herself. Even she's not as simple as she seems in Maguire's version.
Oh, yeah, the chapter mentioned that. I can't wait to hear more about how he, flips the script on her character.
Yeah, it's the good stuff. Yeah, so Glinda, she starts out as this super popular, bubbly kind of figure, almost like a caricature of goodness.
Yeah.
But Maguire, he peels back the layers and shows us that even Glinda, she's shaped by, the power structures of Oz.
So you're saying she's not all rainbows and sunshine?
Exactly. The chapter says she's someone who, for all her charm and popularity, had never truly questioned the way things were.
Wow.
She benefits from the system, even if she doesn't always agree with how it works.
That's so true. It's like in our world, sometimes the people who seem like the happiest are the ones who are totally blind to all the injustice happening around them.
That's a great point. And Maguire, he forces her to face this. He puts her in these situations where she has to choose between, her comfortable life and doing what's right.
So is she kind of like Elphaba's opposite? In a way, Elphaba is immediately aware of all the injustice and wants to change things.
Yeah.
But Glinda, it takes her a while to wake up to the reality of what's going on in Oz.
That is a really insightful observation, and their dynamic is actually one of the most fascinating parts of the book. They start out as rivals, but then their relationship changes in ways you would never expect.
It makes me think that maybe part of Glinda's change comes from seeing how passionate Elphaba is and how much she's willing to fight for what she believes in.
Yeah, definitely. Remember, Glinda has always followed the rules. She's played the game. But Elphaba throws all that out the window, and it forces Glinda to really think about her own beliefs.
It's like Elphaba is this catalyst for change.
Yeah.
Not just in Oz, but in Glinda's own life, too.
Totally. And speaking of change, let's go back to Elphaba for a second. We talked about her tough childhood and how she becomes disillusioned with the wizard. But the chapter also hints at something else that plays a part in her transformation, her romantic relationship with Fiyero.
Fiyero, the prince. Yeah,
Mhm.
I kind of remember him from the musical.
Yeah, so in the book, their relationship is even more complicated. Fiyero, he's this charismatic guy,
Uh-huh.
but he's also really conflicted. He's torn between what he's supposed to do, his duty to his family, and his feelings for Elphaba.
Which makes sense, right? I mean, she's like everything he's been taught to fear.
Yeah.
She's different and outspoken, and she challenges everything about Ozian society.
Exactly. But he's drawn to her. He sees her intelligence and her passion and her courage. He falls in love with the Wicked Witch.
Wow. So Maguire's showing us that love can be stronger than even the deepest societal prejudices. It's like he's saying that you can find a real connection with someone, even if you seem like total opposites.
Yeah. And their relationship, it becomes this act of defiance. It's like they're challenging everything Oz stands for.
But it can't be easy for them, right?
Mm.
To be in love when the whole world is against them.
It's really tough. They face opposition from everywhere, not just the wizard and the people in power, but even their own families and friends.
It's like their love is this beautiful but tragic thing. It feels like it's doomed from the start.
Yeah, and that's what makes their stories so captivating. It makes you wonder if love can really overcome anything or if it will always get crushed by, the weight of the world's injustices.
Okay, so we've got Elphaba fighting for justice. Glinda questioning everything in this forbidden love story that challenges everything we thought we knew about Oz.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway for us? What is Maguire trying to say with all of this?
I think one of his biggest messages is that things aren't black and white, you know? There are no easy answers. There aren't clear-cut heroes and villains. Everyone is influenced by what they've been through and the systems they live in and the choices they make.
Like he's saying, even in this fantasy world of Oz, life is messy and complicated.
Exactly. And it's okay. He wants us to accept that complexity, to think for ourselves, to question what we're told, and always look for the deeper meaning.
And to remember that even those who are called wicked might have their own reasons for doing what they do.
Absolutely. He's challenging us to look beyond just the surface, you know, to see the struggles that others might be facing, and to recognize that everyone deserves kindness and compassion.
So we've got Elphaba, Glinda Fierro, the animals, and this whole complicated political scene in Oz. But there's something I keep coming back to. The ending, I mean, we all know how The Wizard of Oz ends, right? The Wicked Witch is defeated, Dorothy goes home, and everybody lives happily ever after.
Right.
But how does Maguire deal with that? Does he stick with the original ending, or does he completely change it up?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I don't want to spoil it, but I will say this. Maguire's ending is both unexpected and inevitable. It stays true to the original story while also giving us a whole new perspective on the events of Oz.
Oh, that's interesting. You're making me want to go read the book right now.
You should. But before you do, I want to leave you with one last thought from the chapter we've been talking about. Maguire writes, "The truth, as Elphaba had come to understand it, was a slippery thing."
What does he mean by that?
I think he's saying that there's always more to the story than what you see at first glance. There are different sides to every story. There are hidden motives and different ways of interpreting things.
So it's not just about discovering the truth, but understanding that truth can be subjective and always changing.
Exactly. And that's something to keep in mind as you read Wicked, as you meet the different characters and hear their versions of what happened. Don't take anything for granted. Question everything. And most importantly, come to your own conclusion.
Okay, I can definitely get behind that. Question everything. Sounds like good advice for life in general, not just Oz.
Absolutely. And that's what makes a book like Wicked so powerful. It pushes us to think critically, to be open to new ideas, and to always keep looking for our own truth.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Elphaba's journey, Glinda's transformation, the complexities of Ozian society. But we haven't really dug into the animal rights aspect of this world. What's the deal with that? Why is it such a big part of Maguire's Oz?
That's a great question. And it gets to the core of what makes Wicked so unique. Remember how we talked about Elphaba challenging the wizard's power? Well, her fight for animal rights is another way she's shaking things up in Oz.
So it's not just a random side story. It's connected to who she is and her fight for justice.
Exactly. In the chapter, Maguire writes, Elphaba's passion for the animals was more than just a cause. It was an extension of her own sense of otherness.
That makes so much sense. Because she's experienced prejudice herself, she's drawn to those who are being marginalized and mistreated.
It's like she sees herself in the animals. Another group whose voices are being ignored and denied basic rights.
So how does this play out in the story? Does she actually make a difference for the animals?
I don't want to give too much away, but let's just say her efforts to speak up for animal rights have a huge impact on Oz. They challenge the very foundation of their society and make people think about how they treat other living beings.
Wow, that's amazing. It reminds me of social justice movements in our world, how they often start with just one person being brave enough to speak up and challenge the way things are.
And that's the power of Maguire's writing. He takes these fantastical things like witches and talking animals and uses them to explore real issues of power prejudice and the fight for equality.
So in the end, is Wicked a simple story about good versus evil?
I don't think so. Maguire shows us that everyone has both good and bad in them. There aren't perfect heroes or completely evil villains. It's more nuanced than that. Our choices, they shape who we become.
There's that saying, we're all just walking each other home. Even in a fantasy world like Oz, Maguire reminds us that we're all connected. Our actions have an impact. And ultimately, we choose who we want to be.
And that message, it stays with you. It makes you think differently about the world, about yourself, and the choices you make every single day.
So if you're looking for a book that will shake things up for you, make you see things from different angles, and really question what you thought you knew about good and evil, Wicked is definitely worth reading.
And don't just read it, right? Think about it, talk about it, argue about it. Let it get those wheels turning in your head. That's how we learn and grow.
That's it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds sharp.